We, as humans, whether we like it or not, all rely on social connections in some way. When we are forced to isolate, we experience an empty, dull pain. No one is hurting us, and there's no one there to cause us pain. However, it is the absence of others, the absence of human connection that creates the pain that we know as loneliness. I've never seen a story exemplify that pain better than Undead Unluck. When this anime first came out, it had all of the markings of another generic shonen anime. A boisterous, unkillable protagonist with a mysterious and clearly tragic past whose main goal is to have sex with the female protagonist so he'd die a perfect death. However, from episode 1, I could tell that this story was special off of the introduction of our pair of protagonists. But before we get into that, I want to quickly mention that I started a Patreon, so if you want even more content from me, such as exclusive videos and special perks, you can support me over there. The link will be available in the description of this video. So without further ado, grab your good luck beanies, your unbreakable swords, and your incredibly caked up martial artists as we dive into the lonely world of Undead Unluck. Loneliness can be a horrible companion, especially when you've lived with it your entire life. This was the life that Fuko Izumo lived before meeting Andy. She had no reason to continue living other than the shoujo manga she loved to read that gave her an escape from her lonely existence. Once she was done reading the series, she decided that this was where her loneliness would end, only to have her attempt to exit this world be stopped by a psychopathic zombie with a death wish and a disregard for clothing.
He's pulling his cock out!
Fuko, before the story even began, already experienced an incredible amount of loneliness. She didn't get to finish school since anyone she came into contact with was hurt by her ability. She chose to simply isolate to save the world from her unluck. It really hits harder when Annie removes her signature good luck beanie for the first time and we see her extensively long unkempt hair, which was the result of years without human contact. Long hair in Undead Unluck is a motif that seemingly signifies loneliness. Fuko's hair is the first and most obvious example. Once Andy cuts her hair, it was the first step of her beginning to make genuine connections. Another character with long hair would be Juice, who in the story mirrors Fuko in many ways. She too is in love with a version of Undead and would do anything to help him have a proper death. And despite the tough girl boss exterior, Juice deep down is as much of a crybaby as Fuko is, as seen in their last interaction during the 100th Ragnarok. And yes, I did say 100th Ragnarok. The big reveal of Juice is that she has lived through the world ending and resetting from Ragnarok 100 times. She's able to survive due to using the artifact Arc to jump to the next time loop. Meanwhile, her partner and lover Victor, the original Undead, can't die even during the apocalypse. So he has to wait billions of years until the Earth is recreated and for Juice to reappear back on the Earth to see her again. The two of them began the Union and were the first to try and stop God. In the first timeline, when the rules of sex and gender haven't existed yet, Juice had a very short, boyish hairstyle, not unlike Fuko does in the 100th timeline after Annie cuts her hair. We see that this Juice was way more optimistic, happy, and energetic, just like how Fuko was when she meets Andy for the first time and joins the Union and makes actual friends. Juice takes on the burden of using the Arc to jump timelines. She's one of two people who are able to keep their memories and try over and over again to stop God each time the world resets. After each Ragnarok, she spends millions to billions of years planning over and over again. Her suffering and misery grows, and so does her hair. Despite this, she never lost hope since Victor always had her back. But then, she had to lose him too when he lost faith and tried to end their centuries-long mission. She was forced to reset Victor's body, creating the alter ego we now know as Andy, so that he wouldn't try to stop her quest by killing her, and so that he could finally take a break from his eternal suffering, which ironically was the same reason why Victor wanted to stop her in the first place. Juice, now having lost the only person who truly knew her, was truly alone in the 100th loop, surrounded by the 100th version of the team she led to their deaths. Despite the Union caring for and loving her, Victor was the only person who shared memories with her of their billions of years of effort, and now he's gone, put to sleep inside a new personality inhabiting the body of the man she loves. Without him, she is truly alone. Speaking of Victor, He's another character with long hair who experiences unending loneliness. He's likely experienced the most time alone. I mean, Victor had to experience loneliness on a cosmic scale. Victor had no choice but to stay alive and experience all of time, even after the destruction of everything. After each Ragnarok, he had to ride the long way around to the next loop. He had to sit in that vast cold emptiness of space only to respawn back on Earth and wait a couple of billion years for Juice. His hair is as long as he is lonely, reinforcing the idea that longer hair signifies loneliness. We even see in the newest chapters of Undead Unluck when Juice is reborn into the 101st timeline. She is raised by parents that she never had, and she doesn't experience the loneliness that her past self felt. This is why the new Juice, now named Julia, notably had short hair and a genuine smile on her face rather than a brave face hiding a very deep pain. There are other characters who can fit this motif, such as how Billy's slick back shorter hairstyle was a facade to hide his true cold personality. To Billy, he didn't want anybody else to have to go through the painful task of taking down God and forced himself to be the villain to do it alone. He wants to endure the pain alone and suffer alone. When he betrays the Union and shows his true lonely colors, his hair also changes to a longer look. And of course, you can't talk about Billy without talking about his adopted daughter, Tatiana. She's another prime example of the lonely long hair motif, since her character design has her massive web of hair serve as her only means of clothing. Due to her power, untouchable, she has to be locked inside a ball her entire life so she doesn't kill everybody, and this isolation prevents her from doing something as simple as holding hands. Similar to Fuko, the lack of human contact leads to her growing an uncontrollable length of hair, although Tatiana's hair is a lot wilder. Even an inhuman monster, Yuma, like Spring, can fit this motif. It waited hundreds of years to just play a game. Spring was hated by humanity and isolated himself. The only friend that he was able to make ended up dying by his own hand. He then spends centuries enduring the pain of loneliness just waiting for somebody to play a fun game with him. His design in Phase 3, when he was forced to destroy everything around him, at the state where he would feel the loneliest, was the state where his hair was the longest, to match the loneliness that he felt in his heart. When we see his first form and his core, the tufts of hair were smaller, because deep down, the core just didn't want to be alone anymore. Spring shows that everybody can experience loneliness, even monsters. Out of all the lonely characters in Undead Unluck with long hair, there's one character that sticks out to me. The one person who embodied the unending, painful feeling of loneliness that the story paints so well. While Victor experienced the most time alone and Tatiana has the wildest hair, there's no character I feel demonstrates the theme of loneliness better than Akira Kuno, aka Ano-un, aka Unknown. Chapter 47 was when Undead Unluck went from great to absolute peak for me. It was the chapter that led me to create this whole video, and when I realized what the whole point of the story was about. Akira Kuno grew up wanting to be a manga artist and loved showing his mother the characters he would draw. His life would eventually change one fateful day when he found a pen that he thought looked cool. Little did he know this pen would be the catalyst for a lonely existence for the rest of his life. For that pen was no ordinary pen, but was actually an artifact called G-Liner, which allowed Akira to see everything that happened and everything that will happen in a current time loop. Essentially, Akira spoiled the entire story for himself. At the same time that he touched that pen, God decided to play a sick prank on him and bestow him with a negator ability. This ability prevents him from being perceived by anybody and negates his presence from the world. From the moment Akira touched that pen, no one could hear him, see him, touch him, and nobody could perceive any action he tries to take to be noticed. He was completely and utterly alone in the world, forbidden from any human interaction forever. He was forced to become unknown. It was especially heartbreaking reading the panels of Akira's mother desperately calling the police about her missing son when that son was right there, begging to be noticed by her. Akira would spend the rest of his life unable to engage with the world while still existing in it. What makes it worse for him is that he still has the knowledge of how this timeline plays out, so he's fully aware of the impending apocalypse. He knows that the Union will lose to God during Ragnarok like they always do. So what does Akira do with his lonely existence? He draws. Akira realizes that if his power made it so that any attempt at making his own existence known would be negated, he could still draw manga. As long as it doesn't directly point to the knowledge of his own existence, then other people can perceive it. He wrote the romance shoujo manga From Me to You as a message to Fuko and the other Union members to help them fight God. Using the pen, which can manifest things out of thin air, Akira was able to create an avatar that can interact with others as long as Akira's true identity is not known. This is why his avatar, Ano-un, was unable to explain who he was or where he came from, because if he did, the avatar would disappear. The only person who was privy to Akira's backstory was the audience. We were the only people keeping Akira company in his lonely life. Towards the end of the Autumn arc, Akira saved the world by saving Fuko and changing the future, a heroic moment that no one other than Akira and the reader would understand. And after he sacrifices that pen to age up Rip, he gives up the only means of human interaction he has left. Akira willingly goes back to his lonely, unknown existence. Except this time, he does so with a smile on his face because he knows that the grim future he's seen coming all of his life has just been changed. We see that both Akira Kuno and his avatar Ano-un have long hair, once again signifying his extended period of self-isolation and unending loneliness. However, Akira's struggle against God, against fate, against his own loneliness, gives us a look into the power that will eventually be used to overcome God in the end. That power is simple, it's obvious, and it's been there the whole time. It's love. Love has been the driving force behind all of the characters' motivations. Andy and Fuko, Victor and Juice, Shen and Mui, even non-romantic loves such as Tatiana and Billy, or Spring and Ishin. Throughout the story, we are led to understand that all negators have to endure a tragic event and live out a lonely life. It's directly stated by Andy that negators often have three options in their lives: removing themselves from the world, like Fuko tried to do, choosing to become the villain of the story like Billy, Rip, and Victor tried to do, or choosing to overcome God, fight, and suffer like Juice does. Fuko's battle against God, against loneliness, began with a haircut. It was her first introduction to human interaction in years, and it was the start of her love story with Andy. Once her hair was cut, she began to enjoy life, form connections, learn to fight, and most importantly, experience the love that she read about from Ano-un's manga. The entire story of Undead Unluck has been about how love and companionship is the key to overcoming loneliness. Juice's love started the story, Akira's love changed the story, and Fuko's love will be the one to end the story. All of them suffered loneliness, and all of them are emboldened by love to continue fighting until they're able to defeat God. We find out later in the manga that God is composed of two entities: the Sun, who is a giant destructive titan that melts the earth on Ragnarok, and Luna, who exists on the moon and keeps Juice company whenever she jumps to the next timeline. I also have a sneaking suspicion that Sun and Luna are also motivated by love themselves. The story is centered around love overcoming loneliness and gives us many examples of couples who would do anything for their beloved. I wouldn't be surprised if Sun and Luna, much like Fuko and Andy or Juice and Victor, love each other, and that the Ragnarok cycle is an expression of love between these two eternal, nigh omnipotent beings. We've already seen that Yumas can feel loneliness and love, so why can't God? Thank you all so much for sticking around with me. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Undead Unluck has become one of my favorite manga I've ever read, and is one of the best depictions of romance I've seen in recent memory. Who's your favorite character in the story? Who's your favorite couple? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time with more lukewarm takes.